Well, g'day everyone, it's Warren here from NQ Explorers. Bit of a back to basics gold prospecting video today. We've had a ton of rain up here recently, and these creeks, which are not perennial creeks, only flow after big storms, have actually been flowing for a few weeks. So what I'm going to do in this creek, because I know this is a gold bearing creek, it was worked back in the 1860s by the old timers. I'm going to look at the recent gravel washes and see where the benches are, where the floods just deposited material from upstream. There's no exposed bedrock in this spot. We'll try these high-level gravels at first, which is just the recent deposits because it's always shedding. And then we'll, if we have any luck with the cleanup on that, then we'll go for a walk up the creek, see if we can find a rock bar or some sort of natural riffle trap. Not in this spot, but there's a good spot here to set up the cradle. I've got tons of water. I've gone old school. I'm actually using an old jam tin for my water dipper. I won't put a handle on it, but I'll just use it old school cradle and pan. Back shortly. Yeah, a little bit muddy on the way in. Actually had to put it in low range on one of the creek crossings. All good, we're here. Okay, well here's my little half-scale cradle. If you've been watching my channel for a while, you would have seen this before. If you're new to prospecting and you want to build your own cradle, I'll put a link up the top of the video now to my build video on this little half-scale 1860s pattern gold cradle. Cost me nothing. Built it out of scrap in the shed. So that's what I'm going to use today. I've got a Garrett sieve. It's about a 10mm sieve, just to sieve the material down to put in that hopper there. And my old trusty gravity trap pan. It's about 20 years old. It's seen a lot of gravel and gold. So it's going to see a bit more today, I'm confident of that. But I'll just have a look down the creek now and find a spot to get a little sample. Okay, as I said earlier, this is not a perennial creek. Most of these inland creeks in Australia are not. Actually, we're on the back of the Great Divide, so it's actually a bit of a rain shadow area unless you have these big rain events like we just had, which is a big tropical low that came down from the Coral Sea. So anyway, it sort of meanders through this forest here. Let's go and look if we can find a spot where we've got a natural gold trap or recently deposited gravel that's come down the last fortnight or so, which should have a little bit of fine gold in it. If you're new to prospecting, there's plenty of information on the net and some great books, particularly, and read Ian Idris's Prospecting for Gold book, which is written in the early 20th century, and it's just about the gold prospecting Bible here in Australia. Beautifully, he's beautifully written too. He's a great author. He's got a lot of good books. That'll explain where to look for gold if you're looking just with your pan. You don't need a lot of gear to get into prospecting. It doesn't need to be a hugely expensive exercise, and it's a great family pursuit. Anyway, let's look down the creek. Okay, this little creek's running this way. You can see it kind of goes underground a little bit there. It's just rain-sodden ground, then it pops out and flows again over there. But during this flood of the last couple of weeks, it's come down this channel. That's very soft and wet underfoot. And you can see you've got this fresh gravel here. And it's got quartz rubble and ironstone all through it. That's what you'd expect in a gold-bearing area like this. More fresh gravel. Little trap there with that log for recent gold. And there's a kind of a second anabranch running down this way. More fresh gravel in there. That's just come from the recent flood. And really all this area in here, which has been built up over the years in the centre of the two pieces of the creek, the two branches of the creek, potentially fine gold. The bottom's going to be pretty deep though. This is going to be a lot of wash here. So really you'd need to dig a nice deep hole to get the larger pieces and the pickers. But let's see if we can get some flood gold from the top. Right, what we've got here is this little scour that is cut down to the grey clay layer, and that acts like a false bottom here. There's a nuggety area up on the bank there where we found a few nuggets in the past where they're on a false bottom. This pale grey clay goes rock hard like reinforced concrete. In the dry season, in the wet, you can bog a duck in it. But that's where the gold will probably be in this creek. Like I said, this wash is quite deep. I don't know where the bedrock is here. There's none exposed for about 50-60 metres that I've been able to determine. I'm going to sample it here where it's worn down to that false bottom and take that grey clay out and put that through the cradle. I won't need to wet the material up, which I'd normally do before I put it through the cradle. It's liquid limit now, it's saturated, so this is ideal. I'll just run it through this Garrett sieve and then straight into the hopper on the cradle. Yeah, I like the look of this clay. This is the kind of layer we've found nuggets in this area in the past. So there's a good chance there's fine gold through it too that's, you know, below detectable level with a metal detector. Great day to be out prospecting. It's pretty humid. A few mozzies in here with all the water, of course, but fine and sunny. Maybe thunderstorms in the afternoon, but just a great day to be out in the bush. Of course, you want to check this for nuggets before you throw out this oversize. I'll have to wash this gravel to make sure that I, you know, be nice if there's a 2 grammer sitting up in the sieve. Quite possible. Okay, this is what I'm dealing with. I've got a bucket of slurry, which is lovely. There's a lot of material in here. It's all sub 10 mil. I've had to break it up with my hands. As you can see, it's quite clayey, but this is what the gold was in up in this area. And the old timers had to get the gold out of that clay layer, hence the puddler. They use puddlers here, a few puddlers in this district. They're a more common bit of infrastructure in Victoria, but there are several in Queensland, in areas like this where the gold-bearing layer is the sticky clay. So you need to pulverise the clay to get the heavier gold particles out of it. Even by what I'm doing now and stirring it up, any gold in this, even the tiny pieces, will be going to the bottom of the bucket. Now I've got plenty here to start with, so I'll get it back over to the rocker box and start cradling. Nice. Ready to go with the cradle. One thing, if you're starting out in gold prospecting, once again, check with your state about what sort of permit you need. In Queensland, it's a fossicking permit. It's not a licence or a miner's right, very different beast. This is a state forest. There are designated fossicking areas, and of course, private property is fine, with permission. They have to sign your fossicking licence. Now, one condition of operating in these areas, because you're going to see a lot of turbidity in the water once you start putting this mud through it, is that you must not cause stream turbidity more than 300 metres downstream. Well, that's impossible here because the creek pretty much ends 20 metres that way and goes underground. This is going to get really muddy, but that's fine. That's within the terms of the fossicking licence here in Queensland. So you cannot use powered equipment in Queensland. You can't use a pump, hence the old cradle. You can in some states, but that legislation changes every now and then. So just check with your local authority. You can do it in WA. Not Victoria, or definitely not New South Wales. Maybe Victoria, I think you can, but that information may change because I don't know when you're watching this video. Righto, let's start putting this slurry through the cradle. So the cradle is it's just simplicity in itself. It's basically a hopper that agitates the gravel, drops onto a back mat, and runs down across the riffles into the creek. So that's how the heavy particles get caught either up on the top here in this angled mat. If you have a look at my build video, you'll see how that's set up, or in the main body of the cradle. This is a bit of aluminium I put here. It's like a panic bar. It stops the last bit of gravel leaving in case you wash it. If you get your wash angle wrong, or you got too much water coming down the sluice, the cradle, you might lose a little bit of fine gold out the top, but you won't with that there. So let's get into it. So I just feed this into the top hopper. Here's my old style jam tin dipper. Old timers had a stick on it, obviously, so they could stand up, because you get a sore back doing this all day. But I'm not going to do this all day. So we'll just start feeding the water in. Now you can see the material coming down the mat now. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that angle. I can see the material's just drifting at a nice rate. You don't want to overload it with water. And I can see nice fresh gravel on the top where I've washed it. In this top hopper, I've got a bit of what we call snake wire here. I just bought that at the hardware store. That's 6mm gauge, which is 1/4 inch roughly. So anything plus 1/4 will stay in the top hopper, such as that, which you probably can't see over there, but and you check that for any larger pieces of gold, obviously, and the finer gold will drop down into the 2 back mats. So we'll just keep on with this. You can see how that water and the gravel migrating down there nicely. This is how the old timers did it for days and days on end, for months on end, when they had water. I'll just reload the hopper. There's no need to clean that out every time you do a run. As long as it doesn't chog up. If you overload it, it will chog up. Okay, what I'll do, I'll keep washing this gravel. You don't want to watch me wash gravel for half an hour. I'll keep watching this. We'll go for a walk up the creek later and I'll come back with the cleanup. But basically that's the basics of how the gold cradle works and how I'm getting this fine gold here today. Because I'm confident I will in this creek. Actually, I'll use a bit of this slurry in there even. Now some fresh water. Ideally, you can do this as a 2-man show, which they used to do in the old days with a big cradle. 1 dipper and 1 shoveler. So here's my plus 1/4 inch material. I don't know if you can see any nuggets in there, can you? Be nice if we could, eh? I'll just double check over each hopper before I toss it in an oversized pile and then keep cradling. Okay, as I said, you don't need much money to get into the hobby of prospecting, and it can be quite lucrative. If you can afford a gold pan and build a cradle out of scrap, you don't even need the cradle, you can just pan this creek if you wanted to. These big Garrett pans, I think I'll put the price below, but I think they're about probably $50 Australian or something. Don't buy the cheap Chinese pans. They just don't trap gold. Like this is the world's best pan, has been for 30 years. It's these 90-degree riffles that you just, even if you're learning panning your first day out, you're going to get gold unless you tipped it upside down. You won't lose gold out of it. Just don't be too crazy with the agitation. I'll show you how I'm going to pan off the fines later in the video. But I mean, that's all the old timers had. They had a tin dish and a cradle and maybe a wheelbarrow with the gear in it as they came into these areas in all over Australia. I guess the richer ones had horses, but most of them were on foot. Tin dishes, built cradles, because a lot of them were veterans of the California gold rush, and there were a lot of Americans came out as part of the gold rush, and they brought the technology of the late 40s, early 50s, 1800s gold prospecting in California to Australia. The gold cradle being the best example of that. And we developed the puddler here in Australia, which was, I believe, was developed from Cornish miners in the UK looking for tin in clay soils. But anyway, puddlers are pretty unique to this part of the world. And they're usually powered by a horse on a whim sort of situation. Now, if the unfortunate prospector got out here and he'd lost his gold pan, they improvised everything. The stuff we found in the bush that they used to use to pan for gold. Frying pan's been the most obvious example. if your gold pan's falling out of your pack or off your pack horse, you get to the goldfield, there's no pan, whether you're going to use your fry pan. Pretty sensible use of equipment, no redundancy there because your cooking gear is also your prospecting equipment. We won't be using our cooking gear today, but pans, great bits of gear. Well, this is where the fine gold is going to be, and there's the bottom of my sample bucket. I carried it about 40 metres from the sample site, so it was agitated in that slurry and it probably fell to the bottom as I was carrying it up. So this is where the little paste streak should be, I hope. That's just the slurry out of the bottom of the bucket. Okay, I've done several bucket runs from that high level flood gravel. We'll do a little clean up. So, hopper's clear. This is the first mat. Like a back baffle it is. Now, any larger particles will be caught in that snake wire. Can't see anything but wash that. Then we'll take the mat out, wash it in the bucket and pan it off in the big super sluice. Okay, no pickers in the top. I just got to get this bottom mat out now and wash the sluice into the wash the rocker into the bucket so that I get every bit of fine particle out of the body of the rocker. Now I've been using this, it's just a bit of outdoor marine carpet I bought at the hardware shop. You can use miner's moss of course. But this carpet's quite old, it'd be worth burning it actually because it's probably got a lot of little gold in it that doesn't come out when I wash it each time. It's done a lot of prospecting, so it'd be worth burning this carpet and see if we can get any smaller gold out of it. So don't throw your old prospecting mats out, they're probably full of fine gold. Okay, that's pretty clean. Now, let's take this cradle off and make sure I get all the water washed through it and all the mud out of it. So we'll just use our little tin, which has gone over there. Okay, pretty messy in here this morning, but it's good to have water. A rare occurrence in this part of the world. So I'll just wash this so that any gold or heavies that have been caught under the mat in the body of the cradle are taken out and into the bucket so I can pan them off. Yeah, that's pretty clean now. The mud on the side there. Righto. I'll pan this off and we'll see if we've got any colour. Okay, that's all the fines, all the heavies. Nothing in the bucket now. Now it's just a matter of panning this and see if we've got any colour in those first couple of runs. I love the kind of history about this method of gold prospecting. Traditional method. No electronics. The only electronics out here is the camera that I'm recording this with. I'm a two-way radio. That's to contact Colleen if she's found any gold. She's prospecting over there with a detector up on the floodplain there. But yeah, this is traditional gold prospecting. And like I said, it's inexpensive. You can actually get these Garrett pans in a kit, which is awesome. Comes with the classifier, the sieve, as we call them here in Australia. A couple of pans and the snuffer bottles and a couple of vials to keep your fine gold in. I'll just take my time here, no hurry. Getting their morning tea, might go and make a cup of tea shortly. I can see I've got some nice black sand here, so we're on the right track. Interesting geology, all right. Yeah, this is where these 90-degree riffles come into play. It's almost impossible to lose gold because it's so heavy. As long as you keep it agitated and wet, it'll stay in those riffles and it will not leave the lip of the pan. If you're using a tin dish, they've just got a ridge in them usually. It's a bit of an art. You've got to watch you don't throw gold out, but it's pretty hard with these things. You just make sure you're not too violent with it and you don't want to throw the gold out the top of the pan. Almost impossible, as I said, with this pan, these Garrett pans with the 90-degree riffles, but if you get too violent and you've got the pan overloaded, well, you will lose gold. Right, I'll just get this down to the small stuff and we'll see if we've got any colour. Okay, I'm down to the fines and the black sand, and I've got a lot of gold, fine gold in that sample. 1 bucket of slurry. I've got a ton of flood gold. Well, not a ton, but there's some nice pickers and there's tons of fine stuff here that's come down this creek in the last fortnight and sat in that little wash of gravel that I showed you earlier on. There's some beautiful pieces in here. That's a GoPro. Not so good on the close-ups. I'll get my other camera to show you what's in the pan. But very happy with that first run. To be honest, I put very little effort into that sampling. I just thought I'll try this spot. Looked awesome. Is awesome. Let's go back and get some more gold. I'll just show you this gold first. Okay, I hope this shows up on the camera, but I will get some still pics. Audio won't be so good on this camera. And this is in 4K too, so make sure you select 4K as your resolution to watch this, and you can be able to see. Look at that beautiful piece there. It's almost nugget. Almost a nugget. We've got some lovely pickers. There's fine gold all through this. Not really evident on the video, and the sun's gone now, but there's some beautiful pieces in there. Well, you know the old prospector's adage, you don't walk off gold to look for gold. So I'm going to go back to the same spot, keep digging that clay layer on that little floodplain, and just keep washing the gravel through the rocker for the next couple of hours. Very encouraging for a single wash-up run. I mean, always want to test your first sample, obviously. No use digging gravel all day if there's nothing in it. It's probably about 15 kilograms of sub 10 mil there. A bit of oversized went through the hopper, but not much, because it's fairly finely sieved naturally in the creek because it's flood gravel. So I'll just go back to the same spot and we'll get some more, eh? Okay, I'm back at my sampling hole. Now look, that tiny sample is the amount that I took that produced that amount of gold. Could you imagine how much is in this creek? If you, this is what the old timers worked for months on end, and they got a lot of fine gold out of here, and the occasional nugget. I don't know, what's that, 2 feet long, boy? It's probably 8 or 9 inches deep down on the clay layer. I'm actually under the water table now because the soil's absolutely saturated. I'm just going to expand this hole. Not necessarily go deeper, but just extend it and keep taking the gold off that clay layer, but I have to break it up. I've got to make sure I break it up because the clay will stick, with the gold will stick into the clay, and that can end up rolling right out of the cradle. So you've got to make sure you break that clay right up and that there's no particles left in the clay. You basically got to dissolve the clay down to its finest particles and wash it out. Let's get back into it. This is working really well. Any clay balls that come out of my sample in the hopper, I can see them actually breaking up with the action of the hopper and the water on them, because they're actually at liquid limit, so they actually drop all the heavies and dissolve basically, because the clay is such fine particles, and washes away with the water beautifully. So the hopper's breaking up what I didn't break up when I sieved it, so it's working really well at the moment. Very happy with this. We'll continue with the second sample. Okay, here's my second clean up. Not as productive as the first. 8 pieces of colour I can count there, but I'll take it home and photograph it properly for the video. I think that was a sampling error. I busted through the clay into a fine gravelly sandy gravel. So I went through the false bottom that's holding the gold into a barren spot. So I'd say that colour came out of the clay layer, and I probably went too deep with my sampling. So I need to go horizontally in my hole, not deeper. Right, we're back at the car for lunch. I did probably 4 buckets of slurry through the rocker there. Got that beautiful picker in the first run, not so good in the second run, but I got gold today. I knew I was going to get gold in that creek. Sounds confident, but I knew there was gold in that creek, and really, if you sample anywhere in that creek, you're going to get that kind of flood gold from that recent activity. So I'll have a bit of lunch, and I might take you for a walk up the creek and see if we can find any other little spots that would be good for sampling, and we may do another rocker run. But I'm happy I've gone home with gold today, and you know, like I said, it's very little expense from a prospecting point of view. A gold pan and a homemade cradle that's cost me nothing. So anyway, we'll have a bit of lunch and then we'll go for a walk up the creek. Right, we've had a bit of lunch, we're just going for a walk up the creek here. It's an interesting little spot, pretty little spot in the bush. Some nice recently deposited gravel from this little side creek that comes in here. You've got a confluence there, little inside bend which could have deposited some gold. Further up, about there, I can actually see a little bedrock bar. Worth doing a lot more prospecting in this area, and I needed to do it soon because this water will disappear very quickly. Otherwise you've got to cart your own water in and it becomes a bit of a humbug with jerry cans and tubs and stuff. But anyway, that's an interesting exercise there today. We found fine gold that I believe was recently washed down this creek because there's been a massive rain event. We've had like almost the annual rainfall in the last week. Crazy amount of rain. Big low pressure system came through. Subtropical area. Although this is generally arid, as I mentioned before, it's on the back of the Great Divide, kind of a rain shadow, but boy, it's got some rain. And this is what it looks like. Okay, righto. We might get back and pack up the gear. Righto, we're going to finish up the cradling. I'll wash that gear up, pack it in the Land Rover, head home. We've got about a 3-hour drive. Reason being, it's mid-afternoon and there's big thunderstorms predicted for this afternoon, and that track's pretty boggy already. There's a low range area I've got to get through to get out, and I don't want any more rain on it. But don't leave me yet. We'll go home, clean up that gold, clean the black sand out of it, have a look at what we got in that pan from those several runs we did with the rocker. That nice picker we got in the first run, I might even run that over the Goldmaster VLF, and you might be able to get a signal off that because it's a fair size. You know, I don't know. We'll have a look at that. It'll be interesting. I hope you enjoyed the video. Consider subscribing to our channel, please, and hit the notification bell. If you've got any questions about prospecting, I'll always answer them. So leave a comment if you can. I'll be back shortly with the wash up. Okay, well, here's a still photograph of the pickers that I got mainly from the first run. The second run I did was an error of sampling because I busted through that false bottom, the grey clay, into a gravelly sand, and there was no gold in the gravelly sand. At the bedrock level, which was at some depth in that wash, there would be larger nuggets, but these pieces you can see here came from the recent flood gold in the upper sands and that grey false bottom. So good day in the bush. I'm happy with nice little pieces of gold we got there. Thanks for watching, everybody. and happy fossicking. Bye for now.